Welcome to another edition of the Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast. My name is Paul Delivery, your host, and my guest today is Carl Erickson, the president and CEO of Beacon Worldwide. Welcome to the show, Carl.
Paul, thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. We're fellow Bay Staters. We're both originally from Massachusetts, I think, so that's always a good thing. What's funny, I know you live in Vegas now, but when we first started talking, I detect a little bit of a Boston accent in there, and I was right.
There definitely is. The tireder I get, the more it comes out.
Yeah. You don't want to get rid of it completely. Like I've been in Dallas for 28 years, and people still say to me they can detect a Boston accent. I think that's a good thing. We're pretty provincial up there, Carl, as you know, so we don't want to. I feel like I'd be a traitor if I ever started pronouncing all my R's.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Park the car.
That's right. So, well, Carl, thanks for coming on the show, by the way. And so I know that you have a program called Iconic Selling, and I've been in sales for probably pushing 40 years now, and I love having sales folks on because it's something I think I know a little bit about. But you can always learn something, and I'm always interested in different strategies, different techniques, different theories, because there's all different types of selling, right? Everyone has different philosophies.
Without a doubt.
And, we can dig right in. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing and the genesis of how you got started in this iconic selling.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story, Paul, and it's one of those things where I actually worked in the utility sector for 17 years. I was director of sales and marketing for 5 operating companies. We were actually relatively small. We were like $1.2 billion in revenue. And for the utility sector, that's small.
Oh, is it?
It was when acquisitions were going on, we were going to get bought. And I had 2 little kids at the time, and I'm like, okay, do I want to be in charge of my own fate or not? And knowing we were going to get bought, I could very easily, 6 months, a year, 2 years, be out. And I'm like, okay, do I want that? And it was a scary decision where I'm like, okay, I made the decision, right? We had actually built out a lot of stuff from a sales perspective. And I'm like, can I do this on my own? So I took about 6 months while I was still working part-time, landed some clients, and out I went.
Nice.
And that was in a long time ago. So I started this in like 1994 when Noah was a boy.
And like you said, you had a couple of kids at that point too.
I did. I had 2 young boys and a daughter. And I got to tell you, it was scary.
Yeah.
Because I was actually making really good money. Right. And this is back in 94, making over $100,000 a year, fantastic benefits. And most of my friends basically told me I was a moron.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can see that. But I tell you chased a dream. You did something you love, and it's obviously worked out for you. But yeah, I know. I tell people when you've got not just one mouth to feed, in your case, 5, and I had the same 5, your decision making is totally different.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the good news is it kind of was a reflection of my life. And not to get too much into the past, but we grew up with nothing. Parents got divorced really young. The rats used to leave us food, and I'm not kidding. I mean, we used to have food baskets and things like this. It was horrible. And one of the things I said is my kids will never have that feeling that I felt ever. Right. Yeah. And it was a huge motivator.
Yeah, no question. So, well, let's dig right in. Tell me a little bit about, what you're doing, iconic selling, and let's just have a sales discussion here, because I'm excited to dig into this, because again, I have guests on that are in areas that I know nothing about, so it's always a tough one for me. But at least, I'd like to think I know a little bit about selling, having been in it for 40 years. So be curious to hear kind of your take on this whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. I mean, one of the things we really zeroed in on is the services sector and really large, complex deals. That's really where we focused. A lot in technology, a lot in the services. So, our clients primarily providing advisory services like the PwCs, the KPMGs, the E&Ys of the world, so to speak.
The big boys.
The
big
boys,
consulting firms.
Correct. And the way we started is I actually and I say we, it was really I started, it was locally, right? Cultivate your own backyard first, because that's where you have the best relationships. And that's kind of the thing that I built out while I still had a job. I ended up landing some big accounts. And I
How
think
did you do that though? Because I've said this my whole career. Landing new client, especially landing your first client, is the toughest thing to do in sales.
Yeah, it really is. And one of the things that I did is I could actually collaborated with some external organizations, right, who already had a footprint, right, and really became a partner of theirs. And what we did is we brought, I brought a different level of what we were looking at. When we would go into a client, they would do generic sales training. Nothing I ever did was generic, right? I would look, for example, in Data General, exactly what are they doing? What are they doing in the mid-market? Who are their competitors? How are they differentiating? And that key around differentiation was a huge ticket in my clients. Because if I could bring a clarity to how they needed to differentiate in their market, what was mind-blowing to me is the amount of people that didn't have the talk track into a normal conversation to be able to do that. And that differentiation, when you can bring that to the table and embed it in conversations, right, that's worth its weight in gold. And that's one of the keys that I found early on. And what we did, what essentially I then did is I then expanded it that, you know what, paint by numbers doesn't work. And what we see is that if you've actually got a methodology that's ironclad, like you need to do this, then you need to do this, then you need to do this. If you're selling widgets, okay, get it. If you're selling a large, complex, multinational deal on a finance transformation, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
There's too many variables, right? And that actually started really the seeds of iconic selling, because iconic selling is not a methodology. It's a framework. And what we identified are 6 specific skill sets across a complex sales cycle, but just as importantly, how they're woven together and who should be doing them, right? And I see companies make this mistake all the time. They think that one person, right, should be doing the entire sales cycle. And when you get into these larger deals, not true. So of course that led to a whole different choreography of who should be in, how should they be doing things, right? And you take into consideration what the customer wants. There's so many variables.
Yeah.
Right. Paint by numbers doesn't work.
So when you say other people involved, other people from your team involved, team
correct,
members.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And what's interesting too is like within the clients, many of them kind of have a cadence of how they want to actually look at an account, doing a POC and things like this, proof of concept, etc. But what we do is we actually reconstruct it, right, with our clients. We'll look at how are they getting their opportunities now, right? What's the process by which they do that? Where are they actually entering the sales cycle? And one of the things that is consistently mind-blowing to me is the greatest revenue opportunities in large complex accounts is existing customers. And the amount that doesn't get leveraged, honestly, it's mind-blowing. They're out beating the bushes for new clients. I get it, important to do. But how do you temper that with the foothold that you've got and expanding that to actually include more services to your existing accounts, particularly in the big 4, worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, no, that actually makes sense because, again, with the bigger companies, there's different business units and they have different needs. And, you're already doing business with them. It would make sense that you can leverage that relationship to expand into other divisions, other segments.
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah. And what we find is kind of interesting. And as a sales guy, you'd appreciate this. One of the things that gets in the way a lot is the comp model for those people that are actually delivering a winning work. So one of the things we see, you kind of eat what you kill. And in your larger organizations, it really shouldn't work that way, right? That's an important component. But how do you set up really team objectives, team selling? Because in these larger deals, it's real simple. hunting in packs is highly efficient if it's done correctly.
Yeah.
Especially, like just as an example, we've done work with half the Magic Circle law firms, right? So these are the big ones across the world, primarily housed in London. One of the things that we see is that if they've got that type of account model, the ability to expand the footprint and that openness to sharing relationships isn't there. So one of the things we look at is how do you do that objectively, very carefully to expand the footprint of the account. Not only do they get to win more revenue, but they're actually creating a defensive strategy within those accounts to protect it because of the broader base that they've got. Right? And we've done that oftentimes on a performance basis, actually, and it's worked out extremely well.
Yeah, when you say performance basis, are you saying that let us prove what we can do before you send them any invoices?
Not necessarily. There's always a base of some sort. But typically, the way it would work is as long as we can measure it and we can measure the upside and the impact, what we'll do is we'll sometimes actually do a performance-based as part of the upside for them. We take a piece of that.
Okay.
And the key is getting the right measurements in place on those things.
Sure.
So,
yeah, that makes sense because now you're putting your money where your mouth is, right? Correct?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Right.
One of the things that's really important, and as a sales guy, you'll know this too, is what's the span of control they give us. And one of the things that we've done is that just naturally evolved into fractional leadership. So we're at the point now where we'll actually step into companies of various sizes and literally run them, right? From a sales, marketing, and operational point of view. The one we had recently as an example is in the ophthalmology space. It's a place that, and we've done a lot of work in healthcare, but we've done a ton of work in the ophthalmology sector. So one of the things we did is in this particular company, we do a lot with call centers. We started there, right? And seriously, the metrics were awful. 45, 50% staff turnover, right? Getting paid terrible. Training was lacking. The conversion rate of, patients to appointments and things like this was awful. The no-show rate was awful. So what we did is we stepped in and really cleaned that up in a relatively short amount of time. So the CEO there really saw what we were doing and actually brought us in as fractional leaders. I literally took over the role of Chief Growth and Operations Officer, right? So bringing a lot of our experience in. In less than 5 years, we took them from 60 million to over 300.
Wow.
In a highly profitable way. So the turnover rate in the call center, just as one example, dropped to 10%.
Wow.
Right? Conversion rate.
What was it before?
The conversion rate was around 30%, right? Of getting appointments and things. And it jumped to over 60, right? On a consistent basis. The revenue
amazing.
impact was literally, Paul, it was millions. It was absolutely millions. So, and once again, continuing to evolve, what we did is we actually spun that out into a new company. So we actually have a company that's specific on ophthalmology called eyecarechat.com. And we use a lot of AI. It's best practices, which we did tons of A/B testing, et cetera. So, our ability to continually evolve seriously makes a huge difference. And no matter who you are in what sector, I think that's a principle that absolutely people should think about.
Yeah. No, it's funny you say blueprints sometimes don't work for everybody, but in a niche market like ophthalmology, you did it for one company, you can do it for another.
Yeah, and we have actually.
Yeah.
We've got multiple clients in that sector. And it's interesting what people don't really understand influences the patients at specific points in really what's a sales cycle. And so we've dissected those to the nth degree. And our use of AI as an example was used to address specific business problems. So just one example of that, no-show cancellation rates in healthcare are a real problem. So one of the things we saw when you get what's really surgeries that are not mandatory, it's not because of a medical need, it's because you want it, like LASIK as an example. The no-show cancellation rates on things like consults can be off the chart. 22%. It's not unusual. So we brought in AI. This is like 5 years ago now. We brought in AI, created some avatars for the doctors. So now when the patient sets an appointment, they get a text link of the doctor confirming their appointment with a video that's like 30 seconds long. Dramatic, immediate impact on no-show cancellation rates. And needless to say, the value of that was off the chart. It paid for itself in like the first month.
I was going to say, it's funny you're reminding me. I get text messages anytime I have an appointment with my doctors, whatever. I'm always getting text messages and reminders, and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's interesting though. Definitely keeps us busy.
So, you've been working on this for, like you said, something like 30, 40 years now. And obviously there was an evolution, right?
Yeah.
Now, and you also, in addition to going into companies and helping them in their sales process and operations and all that, those types of things, you do have courses that you, in iconic selling, or I'm not sure, am I terming that correctly?
Yeah, iconic selling, correct.
Iconic selling. Tell me a little bit about those. Like, who's your customer there, and what do these courses entail?
Yeah, the target for those is enterprise salespeople or enterprise sales managers. That's the ideal target for those courses. And what we've done is we've taken essentially 30 years of experience, not only running sales forces, but actually implementing this across various size companies from startups to the big four. And we've now really honed it. And what it is we've broken into 8 courses, all online. And every course has an assessment, which quite honestly is not easy, these assessments. And they're not intended to be easy, right? Because we want people to understand the nuances and the details of what the questions are. There's about 60 videos as well of specific tactics and strategies with examples as to how they were applied. And we use 2 different types of case studies through the program. And the case studies are actually a smaller organization and then a larger organization. So if you're selling to smaller companies like dental, chiropractic, even ophthalmology, that's one set. If you're selling to like the top FTSE 100 as an example, that's a whole nother set. So we've got different types of examples across this. So enterprise sales reps are really the target. And the coolest thing we did, and I don't know of anybody that has this, once they've got the foundation and a really good understanding as to some of the nuances of what we do, it took us a year to build out an AI portal that is a coaching portal for enterprise deals. And to say that was a pain to do is an understatement. There is so much crap on the internet that we would never, ever say, never, ever do, right? And the biggest part was putting up the guardrails to filter that stuff out. So, and that's on a subscription basis for like $8 or $9 a month, right? To actually get that on a regular basis where you can just interact with the AI agent. And if you want real-time coaching, or if it gets too involved, we're available to do that as well. And that's something we've launched recently. And, response so far has been really good from those that are actually signed up.
Yeah. I mean, for the $8 to $9 a month to be, have interaction with the agent, what are the typical type of questions that sales guys are asking?
Asking of us?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just as an example, they might be looking at, okay, how do I ensure my qualification process is ironclad, as an example? So one of the things, just as an answer, we look at things like this and we go, okay, how are you actually establishing with your contact access to others? What's the conversation you're sequencing, right, with that individual? How are you doing that? Are you able to put any type of billable or paid for steps in place during the qualification stage, right? How are you actually flushing out who might have the power or not? What's the sequencing of those questions? Because if I just right out of the gate, hey, you're the decision maker. Sorry, that's a really stupid question, right? Because right away you're almost undermining this person if
Yeah,
they're not.
you're insulting the person you're talking to if they are not the decision maker.
You're absolutely right. 100% agree. So that's the type of stuff that, we really dive down into the details and we apply it to the specific account that they're working on. And I think one of the most important things that we've developed that actually emerged out of that focus is what we refer to as the relationship matrix 360, right? Because forecasting, as you know, is so difficult in complex deals. So how do you set objective parameters around the relationships that are involved in the deals on the client side, right? And when you meet certain thresholds, right, you can actually drop them into buckets and it has a direct impact on the probability of win. And so we basically built out some of the algorithms on this. So our forecasting mechanism that overlays the framework is pretty much dead on.
Really?
In terms of percentages. Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing because you're right. I mean, any company I've ever worked for, I mean, forecasting is, they always hammer on salespeople on forecasting, as they should, because that's the lifeblood of the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've always felt like it was somewhat of an inexact science. Like if a customer says to you, hey, I will be issuing the purchase order next Friday, then that's a definite date. But, there's approvals, there's lots of reasons why deals fall through the cracks or push.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and we've seen some of those too. We had one complex deal that we're working on with a client, and they had access to power. Clearly, the senior people were all in favor of this. Everything was going perfectly. And one of the things we mentioned to the client is we said, look, who are the implementers? And have you spoken to them yet? Because it's, getting later stages of this, and these are the people that make it happen.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't matter. We've got access to the board. We've got access to these people, et cetera, et cetera. And we're like, look, guys, implementers, they don't have buy it power, but they got kill it power. So how do you actually interact with them? How do you getting them on board? Because this is something that you need to think about. Anyway, they didn't do it. They ended up losing. Fast forward, because we do a lot of win-loss analysis, when we went in and had conversations, right, because we suggest third parties like us or others, the implementers were so pissed, quite honestly, with the way it was done and the fact that they weren't in the queue on the decision-making process. They went to the senior leadership and said, you do this, find someone else to do this. We're not doing it because we don't think it will work. And they killed it.
Yeah.
Right. And perfect example of, they didn't cover something that they had been warned about, because they thought they knew it all. And that's one of the hard parts in this coaching stuff is you push them to a certain degree, but you got to let them run into the wall.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
The reality is it's their company, it's their business.
Exactly.
You got to, that's a delicate balance right there.
It definitely is. It definitely is. And we've had some pretty lively discussions with clients on some of this stuff, as you might imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes we don't get to see what goes on behind the curtain, right? We may have some good relationships here and there, but like you said, when the implementers are talking to the leaders, you hear rumblings that people aren't happy, but unless you have a direct relationship with those implementers, for an example, you're never really going to truly know.
100% correct.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Your agent experience is talking.
Well, you lose enough deals in life, you tend to learn a few,
Without a doubt.
Well, so, to your point, I have one deal that I always refer to. I was in my 20s and a pretty large deal. And I was meeting with like a couple of people at the company and they kept giving me all the right answers. Yep. Things are looking good. Things are looking good. Make a long story short, we lose the deal. And so I went in to do a debrief. I'm like, you told me everything was okay. And this is just youth and inexperience. I never asked any tough questions. Evidently, the competition had put some fear in their mind, some FUD about our support capabilities. Wasn't true, but they believed it. and weren't able to refuse. That's one of the things I like to do is, hey, look, is there any reason why you wouldn't purchase us? Let's get that right out on the table, because I call it flushing the negatives out, because if they have any reservations about you, you've got to find those out up front, or you are 100% going to lose the deal. That makes sense to you?
100% agree.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, knowing who your competitors are, who's actually in the account, and how they try to differentiate is really important. So when we look at this, like we've done a lot of work with the Big Four, like I mentioned, with the big one being our work at PwC, with some phenomenal people, absolutely seriously phenomenal people. One of the things we realized, one of their competitors, every single time at the 11th hour, if they were losing, they'd play the FUD factor.
Sure.
Right? So what we did is we identified that, and we would preempt their conversation with the client previous to it happening. We said, look, this is the way they're going to respond. And I got to tell you, there were so many times the client came back to us and go, they did exactly what you said they would do. Right? And as a result, awesome. we disarmed it. Right?
Yeah.
And we would also play that card in our benefit as well. We had a pretty good size one. It was about $3 million deal. And what was really interesting is it was not brain surgery to implement this. And this company issued an RFP, request for proposal. And our client kind of came into the deal late. And I said, look, let's take a hard look at this. Right? This is not rocket science to implement. So, of course, what does everybody go to when they think it's not rocket science if they want to win the deal?
Price.
You got it. 100%. No, we need to lower the price.
It's a race to the bottom, Eric.
You got it. It's like, guys, stop, right? Let's examine this. So when we took a look at it, the two guys running this project were 5 levels below the chairman who got them involved in the deal.
Yeah.
So you look at this and you go, how much pressure was on these two guys? A lot was the answer. So we choreographed this to meet with them, have the conversation. And at this time, there was a global leader, right, for this particular sector. So we got the global leader to get involved. And what we crafted was an air cover plan that went all the way to the chairman. These guys were ironclad covered, right? So their risk diminished dramatically in this deal, right? We won the deal. It had nothing to do with the deliverables. It had to do with protecting them along the path of a highly visible deal, right? And it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big one. Risk is a big one. So I'm in technology,
Huge.
Right? Information technology. And, Cisco is a big partner of ours. And when you talk to people that try to unseat Cisco, they say, hey, you're never going to get fired for buying Cisco. They're the market leader in many categories. And so to that point, there may be some better solutions out there, but they're safe to go with Cisco, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's kind of like the old IBM days of the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah, when they were the
nobody
kings.
Gets fired for buying IBM.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, by the way. In today's world, it's Cisco's still the big gorilla in the networking and security space. That's changing because there's a lot of competitors out there that are catching up, but still, they're still the big gorilla out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true.
So you got the courses. What do you enjoy doing the most of all this? Do you enjoy implementing yourself as a fractional, CEO, or do you like teaching the classes one-on-one? Because there's a lot of variables to what you do.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables. And I have to say, do I like all of it? No. Some of it is painstaking. The two things I personally like the most is, number one, coaching on large, complex deals.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of people that are phenomenal. When you are able to untangle that because you've done it 1,000 times before and know what questions to ask and know how to do that, right? The value that can bring to a client is off the chart.
Yeah.
I love that. I love my clients winning, right? Absolutely love that. The other thing that I actually really enjoy, even though quite honestly, it's painstaking at times, is stepping in and improving companies.
Yeah.
Right. When you have something like the one that I mentioned earlier, going from 60 to 300 in under 5 years, a lot of acquisitions, of course, But when you're able to help companies get on the right track, right, that has just such a personal satisfaction, knowing that not only did you help the company, you helped the people
Yeah.
in those jobs. Because a fundamental principle by which we actually work with companies is what's the culture that you're driving. And so many companies don't really understand how culture is built. And I think that's one of the things that's so fundamental to what we do in terms of clarity, direction, training, strategy, etc. All of which we bring to the table.
Yeah, and when you start making people enjoy their jobs, the culture changes, employee retention changes, just the overall people like coming to work.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 100% agree. 100%. Yeah, it's interesting now too. Like with the advent of AI, a lot of the fractional stuff that's happening now is getting really mired to a degree. And what I mean by that, everybody and their brother is an AI expert now. So the noise that's in the system makes it extremely difficult for companies to untangle it and actually look at who should they be working with, who should they be talking to, and things like this. And we hear this all the time. And, one of the things I would just suggest to companies that are out there is if you're going to look into AI, define the problems, right? Or get somebody, whether it be us or somebody else, that can help define the problems in the operation for you and figure out if AI is the right solution, along with data analytics and things like this, right? Don't just bring AI in because it's cool, because that doesn't really help, and it can cost you a lot of money.
That's funny. Speaking of AI, I mean, we've both been around long enough. That's the buzz of today, at least in technology, and probably in the whole world. Remember, like maybe 10 years ago, it was digital transformation, and it was big data, and now the big buzz is AI. AI about everything, and AI has been around for a while. They call it machine learning or artificial intelligence or, whatever it was termed years ago. It's but I think that now it's the everyday person. It's an everyday person in their life right now.
Yeah, it really is. And what's interesting too, slowly but surely, the threats of AI are starting to be identified. So just as an example, there's a company that we work with called Cyber IQ, is the name of it, CYBR-IQ. What's really interesting about this company, literally no one does what they do. And it's all because of AI. AI is a threat to every conference room, every TV, every device that's actually in any of those places.
Yeah.
Now, depending upon the routers and things like this that you use, you can minimize that. But AI, when it goes out and searches for information, it can actually reach into all these devices and pull data from them. And what happens, the data that it's pulling, AI doesn't fix it, correct it, identify if there's threats in there, right? Yeah. So you need to have something that does. And what's really interesting, there's now companies like this one coming up where they actually minimize those threats. Because if they pull in the wrong stuff via AI, like a lot of companies are doing, the threat to the organization is off the chart.
Yeah.
From a virus and a Trojan point of view. Good point. Interesting stuff.
Good point. Well, hey, Carl, this has been a great conversation. I know we kind of just touched on a lot of different things here, but I really find what you're doing interesting. And if someone wanted to get in touch with you, either an organization or an individual, how would they do that?
Sure. One is just give us a call. The phone number that we've had for 100 years is 603-745-8888. Once again, 603-745-8888. Or just email us at info@beacon-worldwide.com. All right, that's another way to reach us. So either one of those, text us, call us, send us an email, carry a pigeon, whatever works.
Yeah,
happy to help.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. Well, this was great. Any parting shots? Any final thoughts before we close here?
Just for all you that are out there, the number one thing that we have found that makes salespeople successful is continuously learning, without a doubt. Tenaciousness with continuously learning will differentiate you from everybody else.
Sounds good. Well, on that note, we'll wrap it up here. This is Paul D'Allegro signing off for another edition of the Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast.